Hey everybody, John Osborne here. I'm Trader John O. You can follow me on StockTwits and Twitter, and I wanted to give you today's Forex educational outlook. First thing I wanted to point out is that I've adjusted my charts a little bit. If you've been following me, I've switched it to show the 120-minute chart. And so I've now, instead of showing 4 charts, which were the 240 and higher, I've added in the 120 and I've shrunken down the monthly. So now we have the daily in the bottom corner with the 240 in the upper left, the 120 in the upper right. Of course, we still have our weekly in the bottom along next to the monthly. Let's start out by looking at the pound US dollar. You can see that we were in this pennant pattern here that's identified by these 2 lines, and we broke that pennant in yesterday's session, came down and touched the pivot from the previous few days ago, or several days ago, and we came back up and retested that broken trend line. Okay, and that's about where we are right now. And you can see that this is, interestingly enough, we've come out of the top of this pennant pattern on the daily. Okay, and even more interestingly, we're still in the pennant pattern on the weekly. So it's kind of like a nested pennant pattern here that we're in, depending on what time frame you're in. So it's quite an interesting pattern. Are we going to continue to flounder in the middle like we'd see on the weekly, or are we going to rise above and stay above it on the daily, or are we going to drop below on the 240? Similarly on the 120. So the question is where does it go next? So let's watch what happens as it comes up and gets close to breaking back through this support line on the 240 or the 120, and we'll see how it reacts. If it breaks up through there, then we'll likely to see continued movement upwards towards the top of the weekly pennant. Otherwise, we might see it come down and make another move back down towards the previous swing low. We've already broken that swing low, so if we get near there again, we might break right through it. So right now the charts are telling us that we're more bullish than we are bearish, so let's see what happens. Let's take a look at the Swissy yen. The Swissy yen has gone down and hit the support several times as 109.666, and we are nearing it again one more time. We've already broken some supports, but we're still in the pennant on the weekly. Okay, we've broken the previous support that we see here on the weekly. That's this one right here on the daily. And look how look how bearish our charts are here, especially on the weekly and the daily. So let's keep an eye on this one. We're getting a signal to go lower, and we'd be looking for our first target would be down around 105.113 on the weekly. And we could see if we could find some other targets on the higher time frames, including just breaking through that 109.666, and that would be the entry point. So let's see what happens as that gets closer. For the euro pound, similarly, we're making a move sideways here, and we've set up one very strong pivot on the 120-minute chart at 0.85105. Okay, the key thing here is what's going on the weekly chart. You can see our weekly support line coming up through here, and that we are getting to the point where we're right in the middle of this pennant and about to break through it. So now if you take this line here, the secondary line that we drew, and show that as broken, we are really close to getting compression there. But since we broke out of it here and went up and reconfirmed this one, I'm going to remove that line and not really pay too much attention to it. So now the real question is, are we going to break down lower through the bottom of this? And the bearishness that we're seeing on the other time charts indicates that seems to be the direction it wants to go right now. But it could easily just bounce off of that and move up to the top of the pennant. So we'll be looking for a break of the support line and see if it goes down lower. Our first target would be, of course, let me move that back. Our first target, of course, would be this first pivot at 0.84020, and that's not very far. Second one would be at 0.83039. Okay, so let's see what happens as it continues forward. Let me just fix that. All right, let's look at the euro yen. Okay, and again, we have a bit of compression, but in this case, we're breaking through that compression as we speak. So we've broken the support of 117.305. We come back up and retest it a little bit, and we'll see if we can go lower. Again, we're seeing bearishness across the board here, but the one thing we have to be careful of is the support line on the weekly. That support line, if we can break through that, we could go quite a bit further. You can see we've already broken it on the daily, but let's see how we do with the weekly. We're really close to breaking that. I would say we can move this line down there and consider that the break point at 117.233. So let's see what happens here. We did get a decent divergence here. We're got almost the same pivot as the previous one, but our signal strength is lower on our MACD. So let's watch for a potential entry on a break of the weekly support line in the euro yen. And that'll do it for today. We'll catch up with you next time.